But the finance part has been, admit, my wife's a spender and I'm a saver. And, sometimes we cross paths on that. But, we live a better life because she's taught me how to be a better giver and a better spender as well. So I think both of us have tried to grow towards, trying to do what the other spouse wanted to make life, pleasant for both of us.
Welcome, millionaires and future millionaires. You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, a show where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their portfolio allocation. Now to your host, Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 361. Stace, we are full swing in the summer. How you going?
Happy to be back on intro. I developed this disease that every time I get a cold, I suddenly lose my voice. So I'm happy to have my voice back this week.
Yeah, for sure. So I came across an article not too long ago. Actually, this was written a little while ago, but I think some of it's resurfaced. I don't know if the tabloids is the right terminology, but it's resurfaced in several of the online forums. I think partly because, one, there are thousands of baby boomers retiring every day, but two, and it's on the mind of many. But two, there's also this massive transfer and wealth transfer that's occurring as part of baby boomers retiring and passing on and what's getting passed down. But on top of that, inflation has really driven a lot of things on people's mind, especially the last, 2 years here, 3 years here. The article is entitled, "What It's Like to Retire with a $5 million Nest Egg," and go around and have, half dozen of these retirees that are around that or above that, which, we have a few coming up. We have one we're talking to today that is in that category, although he's not retired yet. He's in his early 60s, but it's on his wife's retired and it's on the horizon for him, and his net worth is right at $5.3 million. And yeah, kind of interesting to think about, like, is 5 million probably what the old mark of 2 million maybe, where most people felt they could retire on 2, but now that's moved to 5? I don't know. Has it? What do you think?
Yeah, just some quick math. Say you have $5 million and you live another 5 years, you could easily spend $200,000 a year to run you out the rest of your days. Reading through this article, most of these people, their average spend was $150,000 or less. Most of them are not worried about finances, and most of them are still accruing some wealth as they go because they've maintained their investments.
Yeah, and they're also probably in the category that they are going to be getting Social Security or are getting it already. And there's obviously a big debate on what that may look like, in a decade, 2 decades, and 3 decades from now. But for the time being, all these people are definitely going to at least be able to take advantage of some of that for a majority of their retirement years. So something to pay attention to, I think, as we see population trends, we see investment trends change, especially as these baby boomers continue to retire. They are retiring quickly. There are a lot of them too. So if you'd like to be on the show, send us an email, millionairesunveiled@gmail.com. Always looking for new great guests, new interviewees. If you haven't heard your story, shoot us a note. We'd love to interview you. We've got some openings through the summer and into the fall right now. Today's episode, we have Charles, got a net worth of $5.3 million. He says $4.3 million initially, but we find out later that he's got a pension that he's already drawn on that's paying him about $45,000, $50,000 a year. So I think it's probably worth another $1 million bucks. So $5.3 million. He's got a house that's 1.4-ish and a note left on that of only $32,000. So he is very close to having a completely paid for house. And then investments and retirement accounts basically make up the rest of it. So not a huge diversification in terms of having real estate and having money in the market and all these different things and asset classes that we sometimes see on our show. Been kind of tried and true through and through. Started in the military and then transitioned into pharmaceutical sales, and his wife as well. And I think one big interesting thing that is noted in this episode is he barely just bought his first vehicle. It was a essentially a retirement vehicle because they've had that perk with their companies forever of having a vehicle. So that has been, I would say, a big thing. And then he's also essentially flipped and traded up 5 houses. And we get into that discussion a little bit of going from one house to the next and the equity kind of rolling from one to the next. It's allowed them essentially to buy their dream home, but has also allowed them to kind of accumulate and snowball some of their wealth, through personal residence, real estate and whatnot. So without any further delay, let's get into the episode with Charles. Charles, you want to just give us a little about your background or what you're up to now?
Yeah, so I'm 62 years old. My career has been a dual career. I was a military reservist for 32 years, but I've been a pharmaceutical representative for about 25 years also. So just wanted to share a little about how it works being both in the National Guard or reserves and having a full-time career as well.
Awesome, man. I can't wait to get into the different career paths that you've kind of had, I guess the dual career path that you've had. But before we do, what is your net worth today?
It's about 4.3 million.
Nice. And how is that broken up?
So I've got about 2.8, somewhere between 2.8 and 2.9 in investments. That's all 401k and IRAs. And then our home is worth about 1.4 million.
And is the home paid off?
We owe about $32,000 and it'll be paid off.
Oh my goodness. So by almost about the time this releases, you'll probably have that paid off, huh?
That's my desire.
Are you paying extra on it or just paying it down here?
Well, we built the house about 2 years ago, and we just got super aggressive on paying it off. We had about a $320,000 note, and we've got about $35,000 left to pay off.
So you built it a couple years ago. Did you put quite a bit of cash into it? Then when you built it, if it's worth 1.4?
We did. So that's part of our story is that we've flipped about 5 personal residences over the last 25 years, and this is our dream home that we're on a lake in South Carolina and just get to enjoy lake living and, have a beautiful home that we built right at about 3 years ago.
So I'm curious, going back, and we'll get to the investments here in a minute, but flipping 5 personal residents, I mean, walk us through that journey a little bit. Was that intentional from the beginning?
I think I would say it was intentional on my wife's part, but not necessarily mine. But we ended up where we wanted to be. We live in Lexington, right outside of Columbia, South Carolina, and we've always lived around the lake, but never on the lake. And quite honestly, we never would have guessed we'd been able to afford to live here. But we built our dream home about 3 years ago, and right out the window I'm staring at right now is beautiful Lake Murray.
Going back to some of these earlier homes that you purchased, I mean, if it was intentional on your wife's part, were you moving every 3 to 5 years once that equity built up and then rolling into the next one and then rolling for, every 5 to 7 years like a lot of people in California or on the coast do typically?
Pretty much, yeah. So I think the longest we've ever lived in one of our homes is about 8 years. And we started out, built a starter home when we first got married. And then we stayed there about 4.5 years. And then we built another home. And then we moved into a home that we moved up to. And then we built another home and had an interesting thing happen where somebody came up and made us a crazy offer for it. We weren't planning on selling. And then that enabled us to have our first home on the lake. But it kind of wasn't our dream home, but we kept that home for 2 years. So we didn't have to pay capital gains on it, and then sold it and built this home that we're at now.
Yeah, it's a pretty savvy way from a tax standpoint because you get those built-in gains, and if you, like you mentioned, if you hold it for a couple of years, you don't have to pay those taxes on it. So rolling, did your mortgage change over those years as well, or was it enough cash that you kept plugging into the next house that kind of kept your mortgage about the same?
That's essentially, I don't think we ever had more than about a $300,000 loan at any time, and we obviously were moving into more expensive homes every time we moved up. So this last home we built it for about $900,000, and it's worth about $1.4 million now.
Awesome. So you've been able to roll equity from these homes. How much do you think that has contributed in particular to your net worth over the years?
I mean, not significantly. I mean, this has more just been a play of, getting to where we wanted as far as housing in the area. And quite honestly, we lived in the area we did for 25 years because of the school district, and we want our kids going to the best schools in the county. But as soon as they were out of school and in college, that's when we left town and were able to move on the side of the lake where houses were more affordable. If this house was in downtown Lexington or on the other side of town, it'd probably be worth about $2.2 million.
So let's back up to the investments.
Yeah.
You said you've got a couple million in your 401ks and IRAs. Walk us through that journey. When did you start contributing those from the first, from that first check?
Yeah. So Kim and I both came from homes that we weren't taught anything about financial management. And we kind of learned it on our own. We walked into our relationship and eventually getting married with a couple $1,000s in debt. We had never known anything about financial management. So the church we were going to while that we got married at had a finance class. And back in those days, I don't know if you've ever heard these names before, but Ron Blue was kind of the guru. He was the pre-Dave Ramsey guy. So we took a Ron Blue marriage class on finances, and it taught us a lot that we did not know. We knew nothing about investing. We knew nothing about saving for bucket saving, and we wanted to get out of debt. So by going through that course, we really kind of got our lives together. We were able to pay off the debt, and we've never had a credit card that we paid interest on ever since then. And, we were young, we were trying to get a house. So we started out doing what it said of just making sure that we invested the a minimum amount that we got the matching contribution. And so at the time I was working for the National Guard, and they have a program called Thrift Savings Plan. So I started with just doing the minimum contribution. I think it was 4 or 5%. And then, started trying to add 1% every single year until we, until probably 15 years ago, we were at the maximum amount, 15% per year. Each of us were contributing. And, I guess, I don't know how unique this is, but both my wife and I both have, independently $1 million net worths through our own personal IRAs and 401ks.
Interesting. So how old were you when you put your first investment into that savings plan?
Probably 29.
Okay. So you've been doing this for just a little over 30 years then. Wow. Does that surprise you that it's grown this much, that it's worked?
Well, I'll tell you an incredible story. And I share this all the time about the power of investing and how it works is, I wasn't making a lot when I was working full time for the National Guard. My total contribution to the Thrift Savings Plan, my personal contribution, was $27,000. That account right now is worth about $465,000. So that tells you the power of compounding over, 30 something years.
Wow. And was your wife working outside the house this whole time too, as well then, to get to hers that level? Or have you just been contributing to her IRA along it as well?
We both contributed along, the entire time. Her IRA, well, actually, she just retired, so hers is an IRA now. But she worked in pharmaceutical sales also for over 20 years, and so she contributed to her 401k. I contributed to my 401k, and hers is worth about 1.2 million, and then whatever the rest is what mine are worth.
And have you? I mean, I guess when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, were you maxing those out or just getting the match at that point?
Yeah. So I think we went, like I said, we tried to add 1 to 2% a year until, starting whenever we first started back in the early 90s. And then we added 1 or 2% every year until we were at 15% about 15 years ago. And obviously we've been at much higher incomes over the last 15 years. And so, we both maxed out our maximum contribution in the last, well, she just retired this August. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we've both been maxing out our 401k contributions every year.
Did you go to college?
Yes, we both did. We're both proud Gamecocks, USC graduates. And I have a master's degree, and Kim has an undergraduate in English, and I have my undergraduate was in biology, and then my master's degree was in military science. I went to the U.S. Army War College.
Oh, very neat. And then at what point did you move from full-time National Guard to pharmaceutical sales?
So that's an interesting story. So in 2003, I was 40 years old, and I kind of did the math in my head that if in a typical situation with the National Guard, the kind of the cut line of when you get to stay a little bit longer or have to retire is when you make lieutenant colonel. And if you get discharged, if you get mandatorily discharged, I would have been on the street at 55 years old and had kids in college. And in my brain, I was just a little bit worried about that scenario. So I just decided at that point, to leave full-time employment with the National Guard and get a separate career. But I stayed on as a traditional guardsman for another 13 years after that. And when I mean by traditional guardsman, that's the, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks during the summer.
Is that pretty common, or is that an uncommon move for being in the National Guard?
For full-timers, it's an uncommon move. People looked at me like I'd lost my mind when I left, but it ended up being a tremendous decision on my part. From an income perspective, because I would have been a federal employee my entire career. So obviously I'd have had capped income, for that period of time. Whereas going to work in sales, it's uncapped income, and it worked out to me and my family's benefit.
How did you make that transition? That must have been a huge jump, moving from full-time National Guard to pharmaceutical sales.
It was. I worked 1 year in kind of a telecom space job and did some sales with them, and I absolutely hated it. But fortunately, my wife was already working in pharma, and she's like, since you've got the sales experience, I think I can help you get a job. So she actually helped me move over into the pharma space. And so, that worked out perfect. So like I said, I've been working in pharma since 2004, and, moved up to a specialty sales position that I've been in for the last 12 years.
Well, that helps to have an in-house mentor when you're making a massive career shift like that.
Oh, I definitely rode her coattails for the first couple of years. My wife had an extremely successful career.
Oh, that's wonderful. I feel like, if you're married, is it coattails? Are you sharing the coat? I don't know. I feel like it's a four-armed coat. You're kind of both in it together.
That's a fair statement.
When you set out on your financial journey with your wife, you guys come into this marriage knowing nothing about finance. Did you set out to become millionaires, or what was the goal?
That's a great question. I don't know that we necessarily had that big of a goal. Because both of us came from, middle class families, and I talk about it to my girls all the time. We never knew anybody that was rich. I just didn't know what that was. I knew one guy that had a Camaro, and I thought he was maybe rich, but that's about the extent, because it seemed like, we, grew up in a small town part of Columbia, and everybody seemed to be the same. Obviously, in today's world, if you drive through a high school parking lot, it's completely different than it was, 40 years ago. So we didn't know what rich was, to be quite honest. And just, the journey has, made us wealthy, but we had no expectation of getting there other just being grateful for it happening.
I love that gratitude piece that you mentioned there. How have you gone about teaching your children about finance and financial independence and wealth building?
Well, a couple of ways. We were able to pay for their college. We cash flow, but all three of their educations. We have 3 daughters. One of the things I shared with each one of them the day they graduated was, you're walking across this stage with zero debt. So that probably puts you in about the 10% class of people in this country right now that are graduating, this time of the year. And so you've got you've got a turbocharged start on life. And, our goals was to graduate, get them out of college with no debt, give them a vehicle, and send them on their way. And so far, all three of them are successfully independent and, are doing really well for themselves. One of the examples that we tried to show them was, first of all, about, paying cash, not getting in debt. As I shared earlier, I mean, we do use credit cards, but we always pay them off at the end of the month. So we tried to demonstrate the importance of that, and just how, especially unsecured debt can get you into big trouble really quickly. But the other thing that we did was we cash flowed all three of their educations. So each one of them walked across the stage at graduation debt free. And, I gave them the speech of that, you're putting yourself in a class of people that's a very small percentage by having absolutely no student loan debt. And, that sets you on a trajectory towards success for the rest of your life. We also gave all three of them a car when they graduated. So, with the intent that they were leaving the house and moving away. And so all three of them have great jobs and are independently living. And we couldn't be happier and more proud of. Our girls are 25, 27, and 29. So my oldest one has bought more cars since then, but the other two are still driving the cars we gave. So I would say my youngest daughter is kind of just starting her career. It took her a couple of starts to get to where she wanted to be, but my other two daughters are successful investors. Both of them participate in, 401k investing. My oldest daughter's a nurse, so she's in the hospital, their pension program, and also invest. And her and her husband both do. And then my middle daughter she's a great saver. I couldn't be more proud of her. I would say it's been a challenge on both of our parts. Like I said earlier, I think we aligned ourselves early in life, through really trying to get our foundation in both our marriage and our finances, and our faith through, a local church. And we've always, been members of churches our entire marriage, and have always tithed. So we've, participated in tithing everywhere we have attended church. But the finance part has been, I'll admit, my wife's a spender and I'm a saver. And, sometimes that we cross paths on that. But, we live a better life because she's taught me how to be a better giver and a better spender as well. So I think both of us have tried to grow towards, trying to do what the other spouse wanted to make life, pleasant for both of us.
Was there anything that happened or that changed for you to kind of have a mindset shift around travel and experiences?
Yeah. So, there's one of the stories I'd planned on sharing. One of my close friends lost his wife at a very, very young age. And they were in our wedding. We had been close friends for many years. And it just changed our perspective on life. And we sat down, a short time after, her funeral. And it's like, it was a wake up call for us that life's very short. And we decided that we're going to, instead of waiting till retirement to see the world, we're going to be seeing the world every single year. So since Kim died in 2012, we've taken a trip somewhere in the world every single year since then. And we've been to just about every continent except Australia. So we're heading to Greece in about 4 months. And so we've tried to take a major trip somewhere in the world every single year.
So when is your retirement day then?
Well, my plan is to finish my career. Yeah, my plan is to finish my career in two years. And our first trip when we're both retired is to go to Australia and New Zealand for about a month. That's what it is. It's more of a commitment to my company, and just trying to hit a mark with the company that it hopefully will pay some dividends. But if I get tired before then or get worn out, I'll quit before then. We're ready to retire now. We have the finances to do it. It's more of just hitting a couple of marks I want to hit.
And when did you make this plan?
When my wife retired in August, it was like about a month of her being here every single day. I'm like, you're living the best life, and I'm not, and I'm ready to do it too.
Well, good for you. That's something to look forward to, definitely.
That's right. Well, we've got a grandson, and she really, really wanted to have as much time as possible to spend with him. So what we did and we can rewind on this a little bit, but one of the benefits of being a retired reservist is at age 60 you're able to start drawing your military pension, and there's a couple of things associated with being a retired reservist that really puts people in a great place if they're financially ready for it. One of them is obviously a pension that you get. So I started drawing a pension 2.5 years ago. The second thing is I participate in TRICARE insurance, so I don't have any insurance costs. They're negligible for the rest of both Kim and our lives. So, and you probably have interviewed lots of people that one of the reasons they still work is because insurance is so expensive if you're not working for an employer. And so we were able to take the pension for the first 12 months, and both of us working in sales, neither one of us had cars. So we both had company cars, our entire career. So we had to buy Kim a car. So we used the pension savings for the first year to go out and buy our car. And then that was the last day she worked. It was when we bought the car.
That's awesome. Something that you probably don't think about when you, exit sales or have a career in sales and have a company car for so long. So what did you end up getting?
We got the Lexus GX 460.
That's awesome. Enjoy that Lexus. So let's talk about your pension a little bit. Give us kind of the insight on that. And I'm guessing you didn't have that included in your net worth either.
Yeah, I didn't include it in there, but I mean, it's my pension is, it's about $45,000 a year. So I would say if you put that as an annuity, it's probably $1 million annuity.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. And this gets brought up on our show every so often, and how to value these and whether or not to put a value on them. But in terms of being able to draw on that like you are, I do think there is some value there. And in my opinion, it probably should definitely be included in net worth.
Yeah, it's as you probably have heard talking to lots and lots of people, it's a complex question. It really is, because you obviously you want to have lots of runway, and statistically, my wife will live longer than I will, and I want her to be very comfortable as well. But our plan is right now we're going to when we both are retired, I'm going to put about 20% in a charitable fund. That's what we're going to use to give away the rest of our life, and then the rest of it, will be some type of drawdown, just depending on how much it is. My goal is, we think we can, without a mortgage, we can live comfortably on about $150,000 a year and be able to travel and do all the stuff we want to do. And I'm hoping to be at the point where, with the 4 to 5% rule, I'll just be living off the interest and not living off the principal.
And do you get this essentially in perpetuity?
Yes.
And then what is kind of your plans post-retirement or after that?
Well, the plan right now, my wife is 6 years younger than me. So when she's 62, I'll be 68. And so, the plan is that's probably will be the trigger point for us to start drawing Social Security, that she'll draw it at the minimum age and I'll draw it close to the maximum age. So that way, one of us will always receive the maximum amount if Social Security still works like it does today. So that's the intent.
Well, hey, that sounds like a pretty good plan, but I guess you never know till you actually execute it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, let's wrap up with some rapid fire questions. What's the most expensive pair of shoes or pants that you've purchased?
I'm a big on cloud person. So I've got about 10 or 12 pairs of ons. They're somewhere $140, $150 a pair.
What about the most expensive meal out that you paid for?
Well, I took our entire family. There's a chain in South Carolina called Hall's Chop House, and we spent about $750 on dinner one night.
Okay, what about the most expensive car?
Well, we've only bought one. It wasn't for our kids. So the Lexus was a little over 70,000.
Man, you've only had to buy one vehicle, and one of the most expensive expenses I think that most people have outside of housing, and you've only had basically one. That's pretty awesome.
It's an incredible perk. It really is.
What about the most expensive trip or experience that you paid for?
I mean, we've spent a lot of money on vacations. We just, we've been to Disney probably 25 times. We've been to Bahamas probably 15 or 20 times. But we took our entire family went on a Greek Isles tour about 4 years ago, and to take everybody on a cruise, it was 10 or 12 days. I mean, that was probably a $20,000 vacation, and so that was probably close to the biggest vacation we ever spent, but it was worth every cent of it.
Have you ever paid for any upgrades or flown first class?
We have, yeah. I mean, it's insane now. I mean, we're going to Greece in October, and first class is $10,000 a seat, and it's just, I can't justify it in my head anymore. So we might have to figure out how to do the credit card racket and try to. Yeah, that's right. It is. I mean, there's hardly any deals anymore. So I mean, we've moved. We usually fly that premium comfort class now, but I can't bust for another $6,000 to go first class.
What's a key lesson that you learned from childhood?
A key lesson from childhood. My father, was the hardest worker I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, he was a World War II veteran and just worked every single day of his life. I mean, he grew up during the Depression. His family lost their home during the Depression and then went straight into the war and was gone for 5 years from his home. And I mean, I think he instilled in me a work ethic, and I've worked since I was 14 years old. And, I think that was something that's given me a lot of drive to be successful. And I don't necessarily define being wealthy as successful, but it is, an outcome that's happened. But I mean, I think I've had a great life because I've always worked hard. Well, like I said, I mean, if the listeners are, reservists, I mean, the thrift savings plan is an incredible savings vehicle, and you can contribute to it as a traditional reservist. So if you're in the Air Force, Army, Marine, Navy, you can always participate in the thrift savings plan. And I would really encourage, you can do Roth savings and they have, different funds, and one of them's just the S&P 500. And I guarantee you, if you start saving as a young, soldier, sailor, airman, and do that for your entire career, you'll be in a great place, when you're ready for drawing your pension, like I did 2 years ago.
Have you made any big mistakes throughout your journey?
Like Dave Ramsey said, I paid a lot of stupid tax. I've made some bad investments, but I've made some really good investments, and me and my brother, bought two rental houses on a piece of land. And I'm telling you, in the middle of the night, we're going over there trying to fix air conditioners and plumbing and everything else. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. But, when you're a landlord, you try anyway. So, that pushed a lot of limits, just being a landlord for it. And it was low rent housing. It wasn't a great situation, but we ended up making good money when we sold it because we had about 12 acres of land with it. So it was a great piece. We did a good job on the back end, not so great in the middle and the beginning.
What was your first job?
I worked in a fast food restaurant. I worked for a great guy. He's a immigrant Greek that came to the United States at 14, and he taught me a lot about life.
Do you remember what you made?
Oh, it was probably $2.50, $3 an hour, something like that.
Any major mindset shifts that you've had financially since becoming a millionaire?
I don't. I mean, I don't worry about money anymore. I mean, I feel like that, that's one of the blessings of being on the other side of this is you just don't have to. I mean, I don't worry. I feel like we've got enough, even if the market took a significant downturn, we've got enough to make it. And I just, I feel like that's, it breaks my heart because, there's a lot of people in this country, statistics show that about 70% of America have about $500 in the bank and absolutely no savings. And that's a scary statistic. And, Kim, one of the things I've tried to do is, be generous and help people in trouble. And I haven't done it lately, but I mean, I've taught some of the Dave Ramsey classes in the past at churches. And I just feel like I've got a burden to give back because I've been so fortunate and blessed.
You remember how old you were when you reached your first million?
I was around 42, 43, somewhere in there.
Did you do anything to celebrate?
I think I walked in the next room and I said, Kim, I think we're worth $1 million now. That was about it. And she's like, huh, and turned around and left. That's how little she cares about it.
What's a closely held belief that you once had that you recently changed your mind on?
I would say that I've always thought, I've been very fortunate. I've always had really, really good health. And just seeing a couple people have significant health problems really quickly has changed my perspective on just how important it is to take care of yourself and to do the best you can every single day to get exercise and eat right. And, quite honestly, for a long time, just because I was running on all cylinders, I didn't take good care of myself. And I'm trying to be really cognizant of that now. And I think I guess the belief was I thought I could last forever and you simply can't,
Any final pieces of advice for somebody who's just starting out on their journey?
I would say first, at a young age is your best time to be as aggressive as you possibly can, because, the power of compounding really takes a hold of itself, after I would say 10 to 15 years of continuous investing. Unless you get a screaming market. But, we all know that there's ups and downs. And I would say the other thing is hold the course, because I think I've made the mistake of pulling out of the market and thinking I could time the market and all of those things. And, I read the Simple Path to Wealth, and I probably have given 15 or 20 copies of it away to young people, because that is I wish I knew that, 25 years ago, what that book teaches you.
Awesome. That's Charles with a net worth of 4.3 million plus $1 million pensions will probably put you at 5.3 plus $1 million. Thanks for on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website, millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.